Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here to tell you what, well, frankly, to tell you, Mr. Chairman, that the city is really getting its money's worth when it comes to legal services. I really mean that. I told my chiefs the other day at a chiefs meeting. I have a bi-monthly chiefs meeting, and I told them that I was going to come here today and brag on them and brag on their people, because honestly, I haven't done the math. I was never very good at math, but if you took market rates for the extraordinary lawyers in the Baltimore City Law Department across all the practice groups, whether it's litigation, transactional, real estate deals, everything we do for the city and for the people. I got to tell you, Mr. Chairman, the city couldn't afford it. The city could not afford it.
Judge, I think you need to start having bi-monthly meetings with all the other agency heads and explain to them how to come in front of this committee and testify. That's what I think you need to do.
Well,
I just wanted to pat you on the back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Trueheart also recognized the greatness in that response. Please continue.
I really mean it. I'll just take 30 more seconds. You know, we have basically 3 cohorts of lawyers and support people. They're equally important, but we have people who, let's say, 15 years or more with the department, and you all know who they are. And we have people who are from, say, 7 or 8 years at the bar till about 15, 16 years. And then we have a younger group, many of whom I've had the great honor to hire in the last year and a half, who come from experience at legal aid, from the state's attorney's office, from the public defender's office, from private practice. And just the combination of those 3 skill sets, which complement each other so wonderfully. I'm just really honored to lead this department in terms of the work that's done. So I'll stop, but really I would like to encourage respectfully the members of the council, when you have contact with lawyers in the law department for Baltimore City, whether they're here on legislative matters, or they're taking your calls, or Public Information Act, whatever it is, every now and then, if you would just thank them for their service, as we should thank you for your service, and we do. But really, they're doing an extraordinary job. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I think we have a slide presentation that we're going to walk through.
We're going to jog through.
Jog through, okay. First slide. Oh, I have the controls. I never had the controls. There you go. So I don't know if you can see that. Can I enlarge it?
We have a copy.
You have copies, okay. So of course we come to you in service groups. The administration is my office. We sort of, the brain, the center of administration is my office. You all have been down there. Many of you have been down there. Asina Brown is my secretary. She's been with the city for many years. And we provide the direction and administrative support to all of the practice groups. The largest practice group, of course, is what we call controversies. And that's the groups that actually go to court, go to administrative hearings, go to administrative proceedings, federal court, state court, and we focus on providing excellent service to our client agencies, including the actual defendants in some cases, including this council. In case you hadn't heard, I should have gotten the word out better, but the most recent Joan Floyd, with all respect to Ms. Floyd, the most recent Joan Floyd journey to Annapolis has resulted in a very positive outcome. Transform Baltimore is solidly now a part of the law of Baltimore. It was under attack as violative of the Open Meetings Act, of other provisions of the state constitution, and we have prevailed in those cases against Ms. Floyd although there are other cases brought by Ms. Floyd pending even as I stand here. We have been involved in a number of high-value litigation, most of which we succeed in, a few of which we do not. And of course, the lawyers in this controversies group are dedicated to providing the best service in the most ethical way possible. Next is our transactions group. That's real estate, contracting, procurement, and so forth. The service there focuses on getting Public Information Act requests completed in a timely and efficient way. As you can imagine, Mr. Chairman, with the ransomware attack and the events of late March and April involving city government, we have been flooded with Public Information Act requests. And I said to the committee the other day that we have substantially 2 full-time lawyers working on those requests because we believe in transparency. We ask for extensions of time when they are necessary, but I think we've done an excellent job under very challenging circumstances to respond to the media and to our friends like Ms. Trueheart back here who make Public Information Act requests and provide the information that the law entitles them to. So those are very hardworking lawyers. The Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office is continuing to operate at a high level of efficiency despite some changeover in the leadership of that department last winter. I know that all of you have met Tamara, the new chief of that office. We have 2 vacancies currently that we are anxious to fill. We have a number of applications in the pipeline, and we'll start interviewing for a couple of positions next week to make sure that that office doesn't miss a step. We are somewhat behind, unfortunately. Well, we are a lot behind, frankly, in getting our 5-year utility study done, a disparity study. As you know, under Supreme Court rulings, a local government, among others, has to do a study on a regular basis to be able to demonstrate that minority and women business opportunity is less than it should be if the playing field were truly level. And so we are just now undertaking our study, which may take as much as a year, and this council has extended the office's continuing operations at our request until we can get that study completed. But we do expect it to put a contract in place before Labor Day, we hope so, and to get the study underway and completed hopefully by next spring, early next summer. And then finally, police legal affairs. You'll notice a change in the budgeting process this year. I'm very pleased with the Bureau of Budget has transferred what used to be internal funds through the police department. That's now a part of the law department budget. I think that will give the law department a better handle on how to use those funds. I want to express a word of caution, Mr. Chairman, about police legal affairs. We are fully staffed up. I think we have tremendous legal talent in the police legal affairs practice group, 12 lawyers, 2 support people. We have 3 what we call law fellows who are law trained but not yet past the bar, law students and law graduates, and we have a couple of our summer interns working full-time at Legal Affairs. All of which is to say, there's a lot of work over there. And the amount of work in Legal Affairs is going to grow in the coming years. And it's going to grow because of the impact of the Gun Trace Task Force phenomena. You may remember last week or a week before, the Board of Estimates approved a request of Ms. Mosby, the state's attorney, to hire a contract worker whose primary job will be to review the cases involving the gun trace task force officers, all of whom now have been sentenced and are serving sentences from 7 years up to 25 years in federal prison. And what Ms. Mosby's office is undertaking to do, already begun to do, but this special employee will review all those files to identify new cases where most certainly people are going to be getting out of state prison and they're going to have their charges dismissed. And when that happens, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, the statute of limitations on those cases will begin. So that I'm clear, what happens is it will not be until someone, say, in September of this year or February of next year, after Ms. Mosby has conducted her review and decided that that's a tainted conviction because of the involvement of the gun trace task force officers, she intends to bring those people back from Hagerstown or Jessup or wherever they're serving their sentences, go before the court, and null pros those charges. And that person then will have 3 years from that moment in which to sue the gun trace task force officers, and perhaps the city itself or the police department. So my point is, and I'm sorry to spend so much time on this, I want to caution the committee, as I've commented to Mr. Henry, there may come a time in the next year or two when I'm going to go to Mr. Henry and to this committee and to the mayor and say, we need more lawyers in legal affairs, because the number of cases possibly, I'm not saying for certain, but possibly are going to increase. And while we have contracts with outside counsel who do a wonderful job at a very fair rate representing these officers, I anticipate, in all honesty, and I'm being very candid here, I anticipate that we haven't yet reached high flood level of the gun trace task force cases. There are going to be more of them coming, and we're going to need the legal talent in order to protect the taxpayers' dollars, while at the same time putting in place a process so that the city can be fair and equitable to people who were truly victimized. And I'll have more to say about that in the coming weeks. You're going to be reading about a process that I put in place that will hopefully get us the legal rulings that we need that will answer the questions about how we should go about dealing with these cases. So finally, the Workers' Compensation Group, you'll recall last year, Finance approved our taking back in-house the workers' compensation process from a private attorney, a private law firm here in the city. It's been a real challenge this first year, but we're very proud of the work that we've done. We're fully staffed up. We have 4 truly experienced workers' compensation lawyers. The word that I'm getting back, that we're all getting back in the law department, is that the workers' compensation commissioners who decide the disputed cases are very, very pleased with what they're seeing from Baltimore City when our lawyers show up to contest these cases. And what we're trying to do every day is we examine the cases, examine the claims. If the claim is legitimate and the person was injured in the course of his employment with Baltimore City, we resolve the claim. It doesn't go before the commission unless there's some issue that we actually believe needs to have the commission's attention. And we are on the lookout for fraud every day, because we know that there's fraud out there in the workers' compensation arena. One notable case that you may have heard me mention before, there was a now retired firefighter who committed a rather blatant workers' compensation fraud against the city, got away with it. This is back when the city was represented by private lawyers, but was bragging so much around his colleagues or other people about how he had gotten over on the city. Word came back to us, and we found out about it. And we immediately brought a lawsuit against this former firefighter and very aggressively pursued compensation from him for his fraudulent activity. And ultimately, just a couple of months ago, we did reach an agreement. He persuaded us that on account of certain circumstances in his family situation, he couldn't make full restitution, and it wasn't entirely clear that we were going to be able to recover full restitution had we gone forward with the lawsuit. It was less than $100,000, but it was a five-figure loss to the city. So we reached the settlement, and he is paying now a very small amount on a weekly basis, but we're satisfied that that really is the most that he can pay, but he's going to be paying it for quite a number of years as we settled that case. So I'll stop there. I've probably gone on much too long, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Judge Davis. I have two quick questions. One, are you back up and running with email in your office?
Knock on wood, yes, here in City Hall, I think we're all now back.
But you have two other locations?
Yes, and in the police department, they are back, and Redwood is back as well. It's still a little spotty. As of 2 days ago, it was still a little spotty. I couldn't get external emails, but Redwood could, and so if Redwood forwarded me an external email, I got it. But I think we're pretty close to 100% now, Mr.
Got
Chairman.
it. Okay. Other question is the legal team that we contracted with for the FOP negotiations. Do you know what the hourly rate was for them and what the total value of those services were?
What the total cost?
Yeah, total cost as well as the hourly.
I will get that to you, Mr. Chairman, within the next few days. But cost, there's a cost, and I'll get that to you, but the value was priceless. I really mean that. To take nothing away from counsel that we have used historically and who in fact is back representing the city in negotiations, the successor counsel that we hired in, I think it was October or November of 2017, did an absolutely fabulous job. And I will get you the numbers.
Yeah, just what the attorneys billed per hour and what the total cost was for that.
I will get that to you.
Engagement. Jeff, you got
The
it?
outcome is priceless. I really mean that. The two people on the Civilian Review Board that was one of the outcomes of that negotiation will transform police discipline and accountability in Baltimore City.
That's good to hear. Judge Davis, we are very lucky to have you with the City of Baltimore, and especially want to thank your what I call City Council team of Elena DePietro, Hillary Ruley, and Vic Turvola. They are just fantastic to work with. With that, Council Vice President Middleton, then Councilwoman Sneed.
Just real quickly, again, I also like to thank you for the changes, and again, you have been just making strides in your department that your predecessor basically neglected. And one of those things has been claims that taxpayers and constituents put in for water damage to their home that has clearly been noted and proven to be a city responsibility. And, you know, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 is a lot of money for a retired person, you know, that's on a fixed income. And then how is the backlog with that? Because, you know, that amount of money is a lot out of a person's budget on a fixed income. And when damages like that happen, it devastates really their whole year or two.
I think we've done a really good job, Madam Vice President. I haven't received any new complaints.
Okay.
None have come to my attention, I should put it that way. But we are working very closely with the residents. I will tell you, you probably know about this case in Upper Park Heights. I actually wanted to I would have preferred to buy the lady's house. I mean, she had so many incidents that were the city's fault. We just couldn't get it done right. But we did settle her claims. I think she was very satisfied. She'd be more satisfied if we finally got it fixed. And I think we have gotten it fixed. But we have been very responsive. I think both the claims processing as well as the law department have been more than fair with the people who have demonstrated that it was the city's fault. And with the old infrastructure, as everybody knows, sometimes stuff happens and we just do the best we can, not just reacting to breaks and leaks, but also to be proactive and identify them.
Thank you, because I know there had been a backlog in your predecessor, and that wasn't at the top of his list, but you have definitely shown the importance of constituent service even through your department.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Sneed.
I was just wondering if you could give us an average of the average of the charges of PIA, Public Information Act, like what's the average charge that comes through with Public
Sorry.
Information Act?
The average,
How much of one topic do you get? Is there ever a bunch of just one things that you always get questions about?
like the subject matter or? Oh, sure, like a lot of contracting information they want to know about. We're getting a lot of, right now we're getting a lot of inquiries about that. Of course, the police department has a separate PIA process, which is even, if anything, frankly, more active than the separate city process because of the body-worn cameras and all of the reports that the police department generates. So our legal affairs people over in the police department, which are part of the law department, but they're physically in the police department, they handle a lot for the police department. We handle anything that's sensitive, confidential. We handle grand jury subpoenas from prosecutors, and that kind of thing. Generally speaking, and I'm sure you know this, Councilwoman, each agency has a Public Information Act person, and they do a good job, as far as I can tell, of responding to routine Public Information Act requests from the various media sources and others. But if it's sensitive, if it's confidential, if it involves, for example, like from the health department, HIPAA information, they do it themselves, but they also consult with the law department. And so we spend a lot of time reading emails. We spend a lot of time reading emails because, as you know, emails are part of the documented material that's covered by the Public Information Act. And in order to make sure that confidential or protected information is not mistakenly turned over, we spend those hours reading those archived emails to make sure we don't turn over that which is not to be turned over.
You mentioned workers' comp before. Is there one topic for that one as well that you feel, or have you seen like a lot of people on one specific? Okay.
Most workers' comp information is public anyway, and so it wouldn't be necessary for a journalist or media person to come to the city to find out what's going on with workers' comp. Much of that is
Well,
already.
I guess I'm in reference to our employees saying, hey, I'm stressed out because my boss is not treating me right and I feel like I need to go out on workers' comp, or I fell because we're not doing something in buildings. I'm more so wondering if it's, and I fell and I told them, like, is it?
I hope you're not jinxing us, Councilwoman, but we don't get those kinds of
Oh,
requests.
good, okay.
But our claims processing contractor is supposed to be maintaining that kind of data if it's ever sought. And we'd have to take a look at it to see what, if any, part of it we couldn't disclose on account of privacy or other considerations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I do have. How you doing, sir? Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Just have one quick question. And I'm not certain if this would fall under Service 861, which is controversies. But it appears that ever so often the city will, I guess, file a lawsuit against maybe a corporation related to some action of that corporation that may have caused injury to the city or to some of our residents. And I think one that comes to mind, and I think it might have been before your time, but the lawsuit against Wells Fargo, where there was a significant financial settlement in terms of what Wells Fargo was supposed to do for the city. So I guess I have a couple questions. One, when we do get settlements like that, who's responsible for monitoring that the terms of that settlement are actually followed through on? And if there are financial benefits that come to the city, where do those dollars go? And do we have any lawsuits like that pending?
I'm so glad you asked the question, Councilman. Suzanne Sangri, in my office, one of the senior lawyers in the law department, been with the city now for almost 12 years and quite a distinguished career before that, is the head of what I've called the affirmative litigation group.
Okay.
And the Wells Fargo case is one of the earlier ones, well before I became city solicitor, in which the city filed lawsuits or joined lawsuits that had already been filed against, as you say, corporations, banks, financial companies that were engaged in unlawful activity that had an unlawful impact, a harmful impact on the city. So Suzanne and her practice group, which is a small practice group within the law department, approximately 3 people who do other things as well, is the one who monitors the progress of all of those lawsuits. Okay. One of the things I'm most proud of, Councilman, since I got here 22 months ago now, or about, is that we have really ramped up what we call our affirmative litigation group. So as you know, we've sued 4 or 5 pharmaceutical companies in addition to the big opioid lawsuit that we filed. We have filed suits against the fossil fuel company. We have filed lawsuits against the Trump administration. I think last night we filed what I think is our 5th lawsuit against the Trump administration around issues of reproductive health and immigrant rights and the Affordable Care Act and other issues. Now, we're not seeking any money in those lawsuits against the federal government, but we're seeking vindication of the rule of law. Now, specifically, and it brought a smile to my face, because I am the one who gets to take the check that comes in when we get a settlement and march it up to Mr. Henry.
Okay.
And I think part of why Mr. Henry and I get along so well, he gets along well with everybody. But honestly, I physically deliver the checks that come in. I think the largest one I've seen so far was like $2.3 million just a couple of months ago. I take to Mr. Henry and he puts it in the general fund. And one of the things that finance and law are talking about now is creating a more formal process so that we can actually keep track of how much money this affirmative litigation is bringing into the city and where it's going. Now, it's going into the general fund. That's where it should go, and that's where it must go. But we want to capture the data to show the importance of the work that the law department is both doing and managing. And by the way, I think everybody understands, we don't pay law firms that represent us from general funds to do this work. Okay. These are all contingency lawsuits. The opioid lawsuit, the pharmaceutical, the antitrust lawsuits, the fossil fuel lawsuit, all of these lawsuits, and we have good relationships with these large law firms that specialize in this kind of litigation. They front the costs, and as you know, and as you can imagine, these lawsuits are very costly. You got to hire experts,
right. You
got to conduct discovery, and they front all the costs to the city, and they get paid only if we win. It's a classic contingency fee arrangement. And in some of them, we are co-counsel. So some of the lawyers in the law department are actually doing some of the work. And in some of them, we don't have co-counsel. We are bringing the lawsuit ourselves. And then in some of them, we are not co-counsel, but they are representing the city under our supervision. So it's a positive win-win for the taxpayers and for the government of the city, and for the law firms who are able to go out there and take leadership roles in vindicating the rights of a municipality.
Yeah, I
So-
think we definitely should measure to see, the impact. Do you recall what the 2.3 million settlement was?
I know it's either a financial. We have a number of claims related to city finances, the bond work, in the secondary bond market. The Libor case is one where this again goes back quite a few years, where they were manipulating the securities transactions and the interest rates on overnight bank financing. Banks at night, they shift their money around, and the interest rates that they pay to depositors changes from hour to hour, sometimes day to day. And some of these banks historically have manipulated the situation such that they get profits that rightly belong to their depositors. And so I think it might have been the Libor case.
And part of the reason I was asking, and I don't know any particular incident, but it would be, from my perspective, it would be good if understand that the money has to go to the general fund, but that it would go towards individuals, communities, entities that suffered the greatest harm as a result of the action. In the Wells Fargo case, obviously those communities that suffered from, predatory lending, or, with the pharmaceutical case, as it relates to opioids for communities that were hit harder, even though it's going to the general fund. I would hope that ultimately it would be reflected that those resources were being deployed to the areas that were the reason why the lawsuit was initiated.
I think that's absolutely a conversation that should take place among the council and with finance, and maybe target some funds that are specifically recovered as a result of claims. Maybe, I don't know, have a special account in finance to address that kind of issue.
Is that something that can happen? I'm talking to budget, that there be specific account that is created for the purpose of the settlements that come in?
We can separate accounts.
Yeah, frankly, I think it'd be a great idea. Without having spoken to Mr. Henry, I hesitate to be too enthusiastic about the idea.
Jeff, can we note that? So that it's clear that we can see, how much money is we're receiving as far as settlements, because I think that this council would be very interested to.
I should say, Councilman, it might take a change to the administrative manual.
Okay.
That probably won't surprise you, and I'll quickly tell you a little anecdote about a case in which certain parties destroyed certain city trees. I'll just leave it at that, right? Okay. And so we sued, as you would expect, and we were able to settle the case, I think, on very favorable terms. And to be honest, my friends in forestry said, give us the money, right? They made arguments about, well, we want that money because they took the trees and we can buy more trees and maybe not put them exactly where they were or whatever. But when we looked at that, the rules are the money goes into the general fund. Mm-hmm. So even if we recover money on behalf of the forestry or on behalf of DPW or on behalf of the finance department or on behalf of Parks and Recreation, all of those funds, as your question points out, all of those funds go into the general fund. But I don't know of any reason why you couldn't have a conversation and say, hey, wait a minute, let's let's segregate some of these funds and see if we can't target some of these recoveries more appropriately to give back what was lost.
Exactly. Thank you. And if I could just ask one other thing, Jeff. I know this was before our time, but if there's any way to find out if the city actually received a check from Wells Fargo in that 2012 settlement, because I'd like to find out, how much money went into the general fund from that, and try to determine if the money went back to the communities that were hardest hit.
I think I may be able to give you that pretty quickly.
Okay, if you can do that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Councilman, just to clarify your original request, you're looking at what it would take to create separate accounts for each settlement the city receives, or you'd like to see a settlement account just for all settlements collectively?
For all.
For all, okay.
Judge Davis, thank you very much. And if you could come up here and join us for 1 second as we start our next panel. Or Councilwoman Middleton has a quick question for you. Sidebar. Thank you, Judge. Tisha Edwards and Dr. Bunley, step on up. Please be as excited for this process as I am.
I'm overjoyed.
You look thrilled.
I am. I've been waiting all week for this.
So, this is a kind of a ad hoc thing that we did. This request came from Councilwoman Middleton. I'm going to ask that you. I was saying this request came from you.
Yes, I'm the culprit.
Thank you.
Mr.
Glad
Chair.
to be here.
All positive.
If you could just give a 3-minute rundown of what your office is. Oh,
Yeah, I definitely, I know the Office of African American Male Engagement has been just doing some phenomenal things in this city, and I think the rest of the council needs to know what a number of those things are, because it is a citywide organization, office, and it's not just for African American males, even though it's called that.
Right.
But I think they just need to know it's just some amazing work, and it's just good to. We need to know the positive.
Great.
So thanks for taking the time to make it happen.
Great. So my name is Tisha Edwards, and I am the newly appointed Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, and very grateful to be here with the council to talk about our path forward for establishing this office. So this is a new office that Mayor Young established in early May, and he has asked us over the next 6 weeks since early May to start thinking through how to bring this office together and kind of set up the infrastructure for the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success. And I would just like to say kind of broadly, our goal is to harness all of the resources within government, within the private sector, and the nonprofit sector to make Baltimore a city where children can grow and thrive. That's the big picture. And we understand that that is not something that can be done by government alone. It takes a really robust partnership and has to leverage resources that are great resources that are already in our various communities. And so the kind of big picture job of our office is to create a ecosystem where all of those opportunities are aligned and working for this really big audacious task, which is we want to have a reputation of having of a city where young people feel cared about and that they have an opportunity for a meaningful future here in Baltimore. Within the Office of Children and Family Success, what was previously known as the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement, that office will be dissolved. However, that strategy will continue to be a part of the Office of Children and Family Success. So we will continue to do the work that you referenced, Councilwoman, and we understand that African American males, young boys and men are critical to the success of children. So it makes sense that work is integrated into the work that we're doing. So even though we, as of July 1, will not have a mayor's office of African American male engagement, Dr. Bunley and his team will remain intact, and they will report to my office, and they will continue to do the work that you are referencing. We are also doing kind of an environmental scan of other functions in the mayor's office that may also come under the Office of Children and Family Success. Those final decisions have not been made yet, but you should anticipate that there might be some shifts, again, to bring all of those resources to one place in a very focused manner as we kick off the new fiscal year. So I just wanted to provide that context about our office, and of course, provide Dr. Bunley an opportunity to talk about the African American male engagement strategy.
Thank you. And Dr. Bunley, please be brief, because we're on a tight schedule today.
Okay, how brief you want me to be?
Under 2 minutes.
Under 2 minutes. All right. So, first of all, I'm thankful that the alignment has been smooth in terms of the transitioning to the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success. And so we have basically been moving forward. A lot of recruitment in terms of the work that we're doing, but we have to more or less be now collaborative with all of the individuals, because the measure has to be about saving lives. So we've put forth that effort to make certain that the work that we do is only successful if, in fact, we're measuring it by saving lives. So we have a process that we use, and I just want to probably nail that down. In Park Heights, at 4151 Park Heights, we put our program in place, and that program is called the Connect to Success program, which takes place in the Repetition Center. And in that center, what we do is make certain that we use what we call fishermen, and we do activism. We go right to the corner where the young men are, we fish them from those corners, and we bring them into the center. Once we bring them into the center, what they are exposed to and what they experience are individuals who we call life coaches. Those are the individuals that they can reach at the middle of the night. Those are individuals they can reach all day. But they also get social and emotional support. We have on site, we have certified social workers who basically deal with them in the trauma that they have been experiencing, the things that have gotten them out of kilter. So those individuals get an opportunity, those individuals we fish get an opportunity to experience those professionals. And then lastly, in that office, we guide them toward job training, right? And we don't put them out there with our employers until they're ready. So we take them through a process. So that's the brief of it. I don't want to go over time. You gave me 2 minutes, so I want to be respectful of your time.
Thank you, Dr. Bunley, and thank you for the great work you're doing. Colleagues, we have 21 minutes until fire department starts. I'm asking that we keep our questions as brief as humanly possible. Sneed?
Teacher, when I first heard about the office, I got a call from a constituent trying to make it into your office, and I called around trying to figure out how to get her into your office, because she was like, this is good, we need this, I want to be in that office. So I'm glad, I had no information for her, so I'm so glad that you gave us this brief. The second one, Dr. Bunley, is in reference to the 1 day's work, 1 day's pay. So that was in East Baltimore. We were using it. Dr. Bullock over here said, no, that's under Dr. Bunley now. So is it truly under,
It's just part of a strategy, the bigger strategy that we've always used, or that I experienced when I walked into the office as the director at that time. It's a great strategy because what it allows for is individuals whom we are engaging out there in the street. We took the idea, the concept of 1 day's work for 1 day's pay, and gave it a moniker of earn as you grow. We don't want to give them anything. We want them to earn everything.
Right.
So when they're up in Park Heights and they're digging the garden, you know about the garden behind the center, and we say, what are you doing Saturday? Well, we say, well, look, don't be where you are. Come and participate in the 1 day's work for 1 day's pay, which is what we call earn as you grow. So they're out there for 2 hours helping the community with their hands in the soil, and we pay them just as I give my son an allowance for doing good things at school.
And will that still be a part of the budget going forward? Do you know whether or not that's been?
The ED has been absolutely wonderful, and she said clearly everything that we're doing that's positive, we want to continue to do. We just want to make certain that we do a scan to expand and make certain that we take care of all of our children. Though we were the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement, we've been very, very intentional on African American males, but we've also not been exclusive. So we engage all human beings that are in need and that come into our space.
All right, thank you.
Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Thank you, Dr. Bunley, for the work you're doing. Kudos to Mayor Young for setting this up again. I think it's a great initiative. A couple questions for Dr. Bunley, and then one follow-up question for Ms. Edwards. So as far as the life coaches, how are they being, who are they, how are they being, recruited? How many are we talking about there?
All right, when we talk about life coaches, these are individuals who are being recruited, who are volunteers, who want to get in where they fit in, but they have not been allowed to be in. So we recruit at every event. We have what we call these success events, and Councilman Pinkett has been to many of them, where every time we bring individuals together, we talk about our Speakers Bureau, where we want individuals to get involved. We talk about our Fisherman Program, where we want the individuals to get involved, and we talk about life coaches. And those are the individuals who have that desire to work with our young people, and so we're in a constant recruitment mode. We have an action today over in McCullough Homes. Again, the councilman was present at our training, and we're taking about 150 men out to do more recruitment for Speakers Bureau participants, life coaches, and fishermen.
Understand. Thank you. And then as far as you talk about measuring success by saving lives, and you also talked about going directly to corners. How are you identifying the corners at which you are then reaching out to folks?
Well, we do it geographically. I shared with Councilman Sneed, she shared one day, when you all come in east, and we're looking to try to expand to come east, but what we've done is looking at the geographical location where we've been. So when we were in Park Heights, and we're still in Park Heights, we made certain, we know the corners on which our young people stand. You know, if you go to Cold Spring and Park Heights or Ricestown Road, if you go back up in their apartments, you know where well, you probably don't know where those are, but we know where they are, so we go where they are.
Absolutely. And then last question from Ms. Edwards. So I'm happy to see, again, first the focus on African-American males, but then also look at the families. So we're talking about women, men, children, grandparents, aunts, uncles. How do you then look at family support strategies and then success moving forward?
So one of the reasons we thought it was really important for the Office of African American Male Engagement to be a part of the work that we do is, quite frankly, we need fathers to be protectors, providers, and fully engaged in our families. And if we want to move families out of poverty, if we want to create environments where children are safe and feel loved, men have to be a part of that equation. And I don't think we've talked honestly about that. I don't think that we've elevated African American males, particularly in our communities, and helped them to understand they have a purpose in the development of their own families. And when families are strong, communities are also strong. And so we felt like it was important to keep that focus on African American males. However, the office will also look at anti-poverty strategies. The office will also look at how do we create a more robust educational system. The office will also be responsible for tying together all of the enrichment activities. The office will also be responsible for partnering with the health department, rec centers, and other government entities that already do youth programming. So our job, as I said, is the great thing about Baltimore, I believe, is that we are a resource-rich environment. There's lots of people investing in children and families in our city. The challenge we have is we're not all coordinated. And so our job is to figure out how to better coordinate, have a very targeted and intentional approach towards this. And by doing that, we anticipate that children will be successful, but also their families will also be strengthened as a response of our better coordination.
Thank you both very much.
Dr. Bunley, moving forward, if you're doing anything in McCullough Homes, could you please keep me in the loop?
Absolutely.
As it's in my district. Thank you. Mr. Cohen.
Be out tonight if you have a chance.
Tonight?
Tonight, we're out tonight.
What time?
5 o'clock. We're assembling at 940 Madison Avenue, the old Baptist
Yep.
building.
Unfortunately, I'm stuck in here, but I promise you I'll be out there with you next time.
Okay, we look forward to having you.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Doc. Councilman?
Thank you, Councilman. Sir, ma'am, appreciate you being on board. Very excited for the partnership. As I've said a few times, see a real opportunity with the Youth and Education Committee and your office to really get down and try to identify where the silos exist within the youth field and where we can all bring resources together. I think this office is critical. Really happy that Mayor Young brought it back, and I think it's got the right leadership in it.
Thank you.
But if we believe in it, then we should fund it. And as a city, we often have initiatives like this, and they can become one-offs, and then we lose momentum, and a lot of our money ends up going into back-end responses. We deal with crime on the back end. We don't invest in the things that would prevent crime, like children and family success.
Exactly.
So my question to you, Ms. Edwards, is what would it look like to truly fund and staff up this agency and have it be as robust as we all need it to be?
So I think that's, first of all, that's a very good question because the organization has not been funded as of yet. Because the mayor made this decision in May, a lot of the budget decisions started much earlier than our office. So we came a little late to the budget process, and so the mayor's team is working hard to think through where the resources would come to support this organization. And so your question is, how much? I would say that we're still trying to figure that out, Councilman Cohen. We know that we do need to be resourced. What I've said to the mayor is what we may need to think about is a year one budget and then kind of get the strategy in place and then move towards what I would call full funding by year two. But we need to do some work to figure out what the strategic vision is. I would hope that we would be seated, in the $2 million range. Again, we have to see where those resources will come from because we're kind of late in the process, but the mayor is committed and his staff is committed to funding us. Kind of what that number is going to be in year one, I think is still yet to be determined.
Great. Well, whatever that number is, I would ask that you make a strong ask to the mayor and to us as well, because again, we have a bad habit in this city of saying we believe in children and family success and then not showing it in our dollars and in our budget, and in fact showing just the opposite in our dollars and in our budget. So if this is something that we truly want to be transformative for children and families in this city, then I think we as a city, and not just the foundation community,
Agreed.
not just the state, not just some federal grants, we need to invest our own resources in it. So just want to pledge that we will be partners along the way. And like I said, continue to look forward to ongoing conversations about operating in partnership and not continuing to allow silos to exist within this work.
You raised two important points that I would just like to close with. The first being that we have started talking to foundations, and the first question they ask us is, how much is the city contributing? So I think it is important, Councilman Cohen, that the city show that this is important, and I'm confident that if we make an initial investment, then there are lots of resources that we can bring to the table. But I am often asked that question, what's the city's skin in the game? And so I do think we need to be able to answer that. The second thing I'd just like to say is one of the strategies that we think is very important, if someone were to ask me, what can the council do to help this office be successful? We want this to be a very localized effort. And what I mean by that are there is a series of listening tours we would like to do. We want to activate what's happening in communities, and we need every single council person to be a partner in that process. I've asked my office to set up individual conversations with every council person so that you can tell us, A, what's going on in your community that is positive, who are partners who have already invested in your community, B, what are the gaps, because you know better than anybody else where there is the greatest need for children and families. And what we see in the execution of this office is that we are working lock and step with council folks to make sure that we're activating those resources that are at the community level. So I would just really like to put that request out there. We do need money, but we absolutely need partnership, and we need folks on the ground through the council to help us make this happen. So I just want to let you know that's kind of our theory of action and how we plan to approach the work going forward.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Edwards and Dr. Bunley, for your amazing work, and Dr. Bunley for your partnership in the Edmondson Village area last summer. I just had a quick follow-up to this budget because I'm a little bit confused now. At the beginning of the presentation, it was mentioned that there was sort of a merging of departments. So if you're saying, and not that I think this number is adequate, but in the budget book, we have Service 125, African American male engagement was at FY19, 468,000, recommended $1 million this year, which would be a bump of 542. To put the budget, is that, I guess for the budget, could you guys help clarify how is it that one, if this is a merging of offices, that they don't have access to the capital that's put into the budget already?
So just to be clear, that budget book and the entire process was done prior to May 10th.
Okay.
Okay, so the numbers you're looking at is what Dr. Bunley's office budget was going to be as a standalone organization in 2019, 2020. The allocation that he has would come to the office, but it would be dedicated to this body of work. So everything else in the office still needs to be funded.
Okay.
And so that's the conversation that we need to have with the mayor's office and the budget office going forward. But that was already in place prior to the creation of this office.
They were salaries.
Yeah, I was able to piece that together. Yeah, I could piece, because I knew how many people you had working with your office. So I was sort of piecing it together, and I was like, all right, I'm still missing something here. Is there any other clarification on how this can be addressed from the budget department?
I'm sorry, can you clarify your question?
So if there's been an approval to merge these departments, we have funding for activities for one, but at this pace, if this budget moves forward, the additional activities would not be able to be accomplished. What can be done immediately to ensure that the goals and objectives are met through this office in a timely fashion?
So the budget was largely put together under the previous administration and their organizational structure. So we're working with the current administration to find resources within the mayoralty on a whole. I believe the current administration has a series of priorities, and there are some that can fall by the wayside and be consolidated under this office. So we're working with them to figure that out.
And with what's the timeline for that?
As soon as we can get all of this finalized and the mayor put together the final organizational structure, I think that would give us a good.
And so you do anticipate having some flexibility after, I guess, going into this budget cycle to be able to accomplish that? I guess, is that what you're saying, that you feel very confident that they'll have everything they need, or at least a portion of what they'll need to get off the ground and going this year?
Yeah. Yes. Again, over the last few years, there's been a considerable amount of positions and budget that has been added to the mayoralty under the previous administration. We feel that some of those resources can be rededicated under this new mayoral priority.
And what was are you able to disclose what the ask was to fully fund your
So,
activities?
I mean, I want to categorize it as I came on board May 10th, and Mayor Young said to me, come back to me and tell me what you need.
Okay.
We are in that process. I meet with the chief of staff every week to talk about how to pull this together. And the goal is that the office would be funded at the beginning of the fiscal year. So the mayor's commitment to me was that on July 1, we would be resourced to begin executing the work that we identified. So I'm confident that the direction, that we're moving in the right direction. But I appreciate the question, and what we've said is that we think it needs to be in the $2 million range. That's independent of what was previously.
Follow-up. Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I just wanted to make a quick statement and then ask a question. I'm glad to hear that the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement is seamlessly being blended into this new office. I must confess that I was kind of excited that a black mayor in a majority black city was bold enough to create an office and call it specifically for African American males. I don't know why we feel like we can't do that, and I think it's a shame. We should be able to have an entity, an organization that is focused on Africa and be bold enough to say that that's what we're going to do in this city, and challenge people to keep us from doing it. But you know, that's not my fight. Do you anticipate absorbing any other agencies, offices?
Yes.
Which ones?
So there is being a review of MOHS. We're trying to determine what functions of MOHS could make sense to be a part of this strategy. So that's one of the areas that we're looking deeply into.
So I might ultimately be mad at you for not getting a CAP Center in West Baltimore.
No.
Are you getting my CAP
Well,
Center?
excuse me. You know that you're never going to be upset with me because we're going to find a way to figure it out because I think it's important.
Okay.
The reason, just for clarity, and I just want to be clear, the decision has not been made. This is why Mayor Young asked me to come in and start figuring this out. So I want to be very clear, those decisions are still in the queue. But the reason we're specifically looking at CAP centers is because I think that CAP centers could have a much bigger role in a larger strategy. I believe CAP centers should be at the heart of an anti-poverty strategy.
Yep, absolutely.
And if we are going to have a vehicle to work on addressing issues around generational poverty, and make that a focus area, that means we have to be in West Baltimore because that is one of our most economically distressed communities. So I'm comfortable saying that that is kind of, depending upon how the reorg happens, from my perspective, those communities that we need to do that really on the ground work around poverty and economic well-being, CAP Center should be at the center of that, and that's inclusive of West Baltimore. So that's something that we need to partner on together.
Yep.
And hopefully this time next year, you won't be mad, you'll be celebrating.
No, you must have watched some videos or something or heard the transcripts of hearings gone past, because
we get it.
Okay,
And that's what
okay.
makes this office exciting, is I do believe it's an opportunity to do some really great work. And my final comment to you, Councilman Pickett, is there is no bigger champion of African American men than me. I have 2 black boys that I raised in this city. And so this work, his work, is center also to what we do. And I agree, we should have a strategy and focused resources in this, but I also want to tie black men to families. And so they are integrated, and our common goal is how do we get men in homes caring for their children. And so even though this is a shift, I think that at the end of the day, you're going to be very pleased with the outcomes, and it will make sense that we have in a predominantly African American community, that we have a focus on African American families.
there you go. Thank you. I appreciate that. Chairman, do you want me to go ahead and close?
No, thank you guys very much for coming. Next year, what we will do is set aside more time for this important discussion. And I apologize that we didn't have you on the original schedule. obviously this is something that's of great interest to everyone. So hopefully we can get you on for at least an hour next year. Thank you guys very much.
Thank
Appreciate you coming on short notice. Thank you. We're now in. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I did not get the notice about retirement being moved until I got here, and what I wanted to ask is, can I just work offline with Jeff to give him the 2 written questions that I was going to ask? Okay, thank you.
We've already reached out to them. They know that that questions will be coming.
Okay, fire department, we're going to get started in about 2 minutes.